It's 7 o'clock, and we're going to call the meeting to order. Just to let you know that I am filling in for Mr. Bruno, who was not able to be here. So bear with me. It's my first time leading anything like this. So, you can laugh a little if I goof up. The first thing is to do attendance. And right now we are missing Mrs. O'Brien, Mr. Bruno, and Mr. Mann, and Kathleen Curtin, which
she's expected to arrive late.
But otherwise, we're ready to go. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So what's next is student council representatives, which I believe are here.
Good evening, everyone. The annual spring blood drive will be held next week on Friday, March 31st, and signups for students and staff began today. And students are wearing green this Friday, March 24th, to show their support for cerebral palsy.
And we are in the works of many new fundraisers and events that we haven't been able to do since COVID. So we're very excited for that. And we've been brainstorming some good ideas. So be on the lookout. And then finally, we decided on a location for our field trip when we're going back to Six Flags. That was such a big hit last year. So that's all we have.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up is a presentation from Green Meadow.
Thank you, Mrs. Skomersky. We have our mic working now. On behalf of the entire Green Meadows School and community, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Board of Education, Mr. Simons, his central office administrative team. We look forward to this event every year. And this year we decided to really highlight our student leaders, the members of our student council, because we're so excited to be back in full swing post-COVID, and we thought, what a better way than to get our kids really involved in this. So we have a very active student council here, very active, supportive parent base. Our student council is led by Mr. John Flanagan and Mrs. Jamie Couchet. They work wonderful together. They're great role models for the kids. And we have a brief but very informative and I think somewhat entertaining presentation for you this evening. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Couchet. Mr. Flanagan's going first.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Simons, Board of Education, welcome to the Meadow. My name is John Flanagan, Student Council Advisor for 10 years plus, and I will happily entertain any questions after the presentation is completed. But before we begin our presentation by our Student Council members, I'd like to just acknowledge a few people, and first would be my Mrs. Couchet, my invaluable co-advisor. Her dedication, her professionalism, and her energy is second to none. Second, I would like to thank our incredible PTO, be it with their personnel support and or their financial support. They're always there for us. And lastly, I'd like to thank Mr. Garib for his unwavering support of all of our events and our programs. So without further ado, I will like to introduce my co-advisor, Mrs. Couchet.
Thank you, Mr. Flanagan. My name is Jamie Couchet. I've been a co-advisor for Student Council for just 3 years. It's wonderful working with Mr. Flanagan. I'm also the advisor for GMTV, our Green Meadow Morning Announcements program, and the two programs really work closely together to do wonderful things for our school. Working with these kids behind me is such a treat. We meet every other week in the morning before school, and they've worked really hard to prepare this presentation for you tonight. So I would like to turn things over to our Student Council President, 5th grader Chase Lucier.
Allow me to introduce myself. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Chase Lucier, this year's Student Council President. I'm currently serving my second year on the Student Council. I'd like to welcome you all to our wonderful school. We are excited to tell you about our club this evening. But first, I'd like to introduce our other fifth grade officers. Samantha DeFrias is our Vice President and is a wonderful help to me as a president. She has also been a part of the Student Council for 2 years. I'd also like to introduce Caleb Lacasse, our secretary. He does a wonderful job with our agenda and taking notes during our bi-weekly meetings. Our other members include Evelyn Barron, Gabby Burrell, Cameron Hotz, Mina Cadelso, Allie DeGraffenreid, Evan Donnelly, Emily Gildart, Matthew Groves, and Zachary Sheehan. Our advisors are Mr. Flanagan and Mrs. Couchet. Now that we are all acquainted, let me invite you to enjoy our presentation that we've put together for you this evening.
Let's start with our election process. There was a great deal of interest in running for student council at Green Meadow. This year, 58 students ran for election in grades 4 and 5. Only the top 2 candidates were chosen to represent their homerooms. In order to run for election, we had to get a signed petition, make a campaign poster, and prepare a speech for our class. It can be a little stressful, but for me, stepping out of my comfort zone proved to be very rewarding. It's an honor to represent my 4th grade class, and I definitely plan to run again next year as a 5th grader.
The student council meets before school twice a month. Most of us come to meetings dressed in our student council gear. We work hard to share our ideas from our class suggestion boxes, plan ways to make the school more fun, and are eager to help our school community and beyond. Once our meetings are complete, we take the information and share it with our homeroom. Our notes are kept in our binders. We celebrate our hard work and student council birthdays each month with donuts at our morning meetings.
This year we hit the ground running by planning one of our biggest events of the year, Veterans Day. As you can see from the pictures, honoring our veterans is very important to the students and staff at Green Meadow. Each year we invite all veterans and their student escorts to attend a breakfast prior to our assembly. This year we had 50 servicemen and women representing all branches of the military. Each year we invite local politicians to speak at our assembly. But the highlight for all of us was Bernard Crosby, a 95-year-old veteran who served in the Marine Corps during World War II.
The next event student council was tasked with was collecting food for the Conserves You in Rensselaer. It is a local pantry organization that provides food for family in need right here in Rensselaer County. We hold 2 events each year, our fall canned food drive and our very popular Super Bowl. We are proud to say that so far this year we have collected approximately 4,000 cans for families in need.
Collecting cans was great, but what really made a difference for us was visiting the local food pantry. While we were there, we carried a ton of heavy boxes full of cans into the building. We loaded them on flatbed carts and stocked the shelves. But our favorite part was we also helped pack Thanksgiving bags for families in need, but our favorite part was helping to set up the holiday shop. This shop provides parents an opportunity to shop for their kids for the holidays for free. We moved shelves, unpacked games, toys, dolls, and other items just in time for the holidays. We all quickly realized how fortunate we are.
While we were at Concerns You, we noticed that they didn't have many books for kids to choose from. So we immediately had an idea. Student Council created a collection box at our school's buy one get one free book fair for book donations. We quickly filled a box with brand new books for kids in our community. We also worked to put together birthday club packages. Families could come to Concerns You to pick up birthday bags that contained everything they would need to throw a birthday party. These packages included birthday invitations, candles, cake mix, party favors, decorations, themed paper products, and thank you cards. No one should be deprived of celebrating their special day. Thanks to the Green Meadow community, we were able to provide families with the supplies they needed. At a recent student council meeting, we had an opportunity to visit the supply closet for Green Meadow's backpack program, an organization run solely by staff and parent volunteers. Our PTO also plays a huge part in helping. So, in conjunction, we wanted to help too. So, in conjunction with our canned food drive, we made an additional collection for the backpack program. We provided the backpack program with things like cereal, peanut butter, and other important food staples. It felt good to do our part. After we returned from the holiday break, we got started on Valentine cards for local senior citizens. At our meeting, we decorated colorful cards and wrote special messages to the residents at Hawthorne Ridge and East Greenbush. We also provided materials for students in our class to make more cards. Together, we were able to send over 200 cards. We hope that it made their Valentine's Day a little more special.
At our meetings, we take a lot of suggestions from students at Green Meadow. One of our most popular requests are for more Spirit Days. Ask and you shall receive. At Spirit Days help us to bond as a community, and it's fun to show our school spirit.
We are lucky to have a TV studio here at our school. The Student Council regularly makes appearances on GMTV to update our school on upcoming events. We also award prizes for classes and students who are large contributors to our causes. I especially loved when we invited students from our school to do a parade of cans on GMTV. We invited every student who brought in a can to line up outside of our studio and be on TV, while the line stretched all the way down the back hallway of Green Meadow. This boosted our can count by 300 cans in one day. Each year, Green Meadow does its part to raise awareness about a variety of health conditions. In November, we learned about diabetes during Diabetes Awareness Month. In March, the Student Council sponsors a Wear Purple for Epilepsy Day to show support to those who are living with this condition. We also welcomed a spokesperson from the Epilepsy Foundation who visited students from grades 3, 4, and 5 to educate them about epilepsy.
Brindley's Bags is an organization that is near and dear to our hearts here at Green Meadow. Founded by kindergarten teacher Mrs. Tarbox after her daughter Brindley was born prematurely. This organization provides necessities to parents while their baby is being cared for in the NICUs of local hospitals. The Student Council hosted a Ball Caps for Babies event last spring. Students and staff at Green Meadow raised $675 that went directly to Brindley's Bags. I, too, was a preemie born 2 months early who spent a month in the NICU at Albany Medical Center. I'm proud to help Brindley's Bags any way I can. Do you like to help animals? So do we. Last year, Student Council, in conjunction with local Girl Scout Troop 1900, collected pet items for the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society. For the month of April, we had a pet drive to collect food, toys, bedding, and other items for animals awaiting adoption. We also sold paw prints for $1 and invited students and staff to participate in our parade of pets. We proudly sent our donation of $222 and over 200 pet items to this organization in Menands.
future of our student body is very important to us, and Student Council wanted to do our part to make the incoming kindergartners feel comfortable in their new school. So last June, during kindergarten orientation, we came to the gym to talk to the incoming kindergartners. We played games, answered questions, and even gave tours of our school. This event was even Instagram worthy.
Another highlight of my year on Student Council last year was our field trip to the Rensselaer County Courthouse. District Attorney Mary Pat Donnelly was a wonderful host who allowed us to tour the courthouse and meet several local politicians like Rensselaer County Executive Steve McLaughlin and East Greenbush Town Justice Jessica Moserine. We also met Rensselaer County judges like Deborah Young, Jennifer Sober, and Paul Morgan. We even had the opportunity to sit in and listen to real court cases. We even had a catered lunch, another Instagram-worthy event.
Flag Day is an important day for our school. Each June, we have a Patriotic Spirit Day and have an outdoor assembly to honor our flag. Student Council also dedicates the flag that has flown in front of Green Meadow to somebody incredible service for our school. Last year's recipient was our former PTO president, Nicole Crisanda.
Sometimes our principal, Mr. Garib, asked the student council for some help. Mr. Garib polled the members of student council to find out what kind of games students would want to play with outside. After speaking with our peers, we provided a list of large outdoor games. Last spring, these games were purchased and members of the student council showed the younger kids how the games should be used. It has been a wonderful addition to our outdoor recess time.
That wraps up our presentation. We appreciate your time this evening and invite you to enjoy some refreshments provided by our student council parents. And now we'd like to turn things over to our advisors.
Thank you, Student Council. At this time, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If there's any questions about anything about Student Council or what you saw, I'll entertain them now. If not, we can have a little refreshments.
Just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Flanagan, Mrs. Couchet, Mr. Garib. The kids were wonderful. You guys did a great job. And special thanks to you guys for all supporting them and being with them. I can tell you my kids went through this school and student council meant a lot. All those special events are things that they remember for the rest of their lives. It's very important. So thank you for contributing.
Thank you.
Just want to take a quick moment to thank the parents for taking some time out of your busy evenings. Thank you for coming and all of your support. And a special thank you to the Board of Education and Mr. Simons and his administrators. You're there for us every day, and we really appreciate it. I'll turn it now back over to you, Mrs. Skomersky. And again, we do have some refreshments if you'd like to enjoy them. Yeah. Thank you, kids. Fantastic job. I am so proud of you.
We'll take a few minutes to enjoy a snack and chat, and then we'll round back up again. I'm going to call the meeting to order again. Next up is approval of the minutes. The first one is February 27th, which I believe all of us were in attendance. Myself and Emily were a couple minutes late, but I wasn't. Oh, I thought you said it was. Oh, the special meeting? That was the special meeting. I was not. Sorry. So, any questions on the minutes? Comments? Can I have a call or vote? Motion
to accept.
John?
Seconded.
And everybody in approval? Great, except for Kathleen. Kathleen, you can't.
I abstain.
Okay.
I'm abstaining.
Oh my Lord. Mike is like saying, what is going on? All right, the second one is the minutes for March 8th, which everyone is in. Any comments or questions? Motion? Second?
Whoever.
All? Opposed? It was Joanne.
Oh, thank you.
Joanne, you were second. Next up is the board forum. I'll start to my right. Emily? Carol? Good? Okay. I gotta read this one. Okay, next up is the public forum. Residents, students, employees, and business representatives of the East Greenbush School District may address the board on matters concerning programs and/or operations of the district other than matters involving personnel. Members of the board do not directly respond to citizen concerns during the public forum. If a response is appropriate, either the president or superintendent will contact the individual in the near future. Those persons wishing to address the board will be recognized by the chair of the meeting and shall state for the record their name, address, or affiliation with the district or business. While the board does not wish to infringe upon free speech protections, it must be stressed that the visitors forum is not deemed to be an open forum. The board president will conduct the forum for the orderly and efficient operations of the board business. In addition, any remarks which may be considered defamatory or stigmatizing are prohibited and will be declared out of order. All comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to share? I told you I was going to swear that up. Right up there.
Hi, my name is Marie McBride, 30 Robin Lane. I'm with the All Sports Club. On Monday night, the selection committee from the All Sports Club met and we reviewed over 40 applications for our Hall of Fame. It will be our 21st annual Hall of Fame celebration, and the selection committee carefully reviewed all of the applications, and I'm happy to announce that we have 3 alumni athletes being inducted this year. Jamie Carr Ferrari, class of 2000, Stephen Sayer, class of 2002, and Brendan Morgan, class of 2012. In addition, 3 coaches, our community members, were selected into our Hall of Fame: Bill Newman, Bill Klum, and Todd Romer. So we're very excited about those 6 inductees. Our banquet is going to be on May 13th, and you know we would love to have you all there, and we would love to have you as our guest, but we can't. So I am going to leave these flyers here. Please take them, share them, and we hope you'll celebrate with us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm assuming we share that on our website, right?
Yes, we will publicize that information on our website. We'll provide that information to Mr. Adam, and we will promote the event through the community. It's a wonderful event, Mrs. McBride, and we really appreciate your involvement and the Athletic Hall of Fame Committee.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next up is presentations and reports. Mr. Sennett first.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second budget presentation. This is an opportunity for the district to inform both our board and our community about the status of budget development for the proposed school budget for next school year. Thank you, Marcin. That's a little better. So this is our second budget presentation, and it's an opportunity for the board and the community, those members of the community that are here participating in person, and those members who are participating in the meeting via the live stream, to learn about the status of the proposed budget for next school year, and looking at the budget from the perspective of supporting our students' success for next school year. We begin the presentation this evening by talking about some district highlights. At our last meeting on March 8th, we spoke about the accomplishments of our students, being a top-ranked school district in the Albany region, more than 80 plus school districts, and we always consistently over the last few years have ranked in the top 10. We have 2 schools in the district, the one that we are in now, Green Meadow and Red Mill, as having been blue ribbon schools, and our state test performance is above the state average. Additionally, our high school has been recognized by U.S. News and World Report as one of the top high schools in the nation, and we have had many accolades for our teachers that we will highlight. The budget is not just about dollars and cents, expenditures and revenues. It's about supporting the success that we've enjoyed as a school district and continuing to improve in both areas of academics, but also our extracurricular activities. We're going to talk about some modifications that have been made to the tax cap formula. At previous meetings, we talked about what goes into the New York State law, which prescribes the amount of increase we can propose in the tax levy each year. It's formally called the 2% tax cap, but it is not a 2% formula. It is a complicated formula, and we have been able to adjust that formula based on some information that we received since March 8th. I will also review some changes that we made on the expenditure side of the budget. To the budget recommendations, we made some adjustments based on the feedback that we received from the board. I'm going to take a little time explaining the difference between the board's authority to increase the overall amount of money that is collected through the tax levy and how tax rates are calculated and what actually goes into the calculation of individual community members' tax bills. There's often some confusion about the difference between what the board has authority to do, what is determined by the state Office of Real Property Services, and what is determined in terms of the value of individual properties, both residential and commercial, which is approved by the town assessor and adjusted by the town assessors. Additionally, we're going to outline the biggest portion of our budget, which is our salaries and benefits. We often say that we are a people business. We need people to serve the students. We need teachers and support staff in our buildings to provide the excellence, and that is the largest portion of our budget, which we're going to highlight this evening. Additionally, we're going to propose replacement of some of our buses. The board is familiar with the fact that our district and our community has authorized in the past the establishment of a bus purchase reserve. We use that bus purchase reserve to lower the amount of money that we have to borrow in terms of interest and principal payments to be able to continue the cycle of replacing aging, high mileage buses with new, more efficient buses. We're going to talk about some changes that we may want to make with the board this evening as we continue to look at our transportation replacement schedule and some of the opportunities that may be provided now with the funds that we have available, as opposed to when we get into a period in which we're going to have to phase out our gas and diesel buses and replace those buses with zero emission buses. Additionally, we have some vehicles for our maintenance and operations department. We've made some adjustments to that proposed additional expenditure. I'm going to talk about that. We're going to talk about future considerations, including our meeting schedule, opportunities for the community to learn more about the budget this spring as we move towards the vote, which will be on the third Tuesday in May. So in terms of highlighting the continued excellence of our district, we boast very proudly that we frequently have our teachers selected as top teachers by Channel 13 News. And of course, we know Steve Lapola is an exceptional social studies teacher, history teacher in our Columbia High School, and he has recently been named a top teacher. And Liz Griffin, who is an extraordinary library media specialist at Red Mill. Last year, we had 2 or 3 teachers recognized. Again, this year, we've had 2 teachers recognized. We have excellence throughout our high school, our middle school, and our elementary school with our top Channel 13 top teachers. Additionally, in addition to making sure that we are offering the best, everybody stand up and cheer to get the lights back on. We can pretend that you were cheering for the budget. Very good, cheering for teachers. In addition to looking at the budget and how the budget supports academic programs in our classrooms, we often emphasize the importance of educating the whole child. In fact, that is one of our board's goals. So music programs, art programs, technology programs, extracurricular clubs. Our kids not only shine in the classroom, but they shine in our jazz band, they shine in our musical performances, including this performance at Columbia High School that occurred just a few weeks ago, a Freaky Friday. I often say that the Columbia High School performances and our Goff Middle School performances are the best show you're going to see north of Broadway. In addition, last weekend, our middle school kids performed in Annie at the middle school, and that was an exceptional performance as well. So the arts bring out the best in the kids, and our teachers who teach music, who teach art, they're not only really creative, but they help kids discover things about themselves that they might not even realize, and their talents shine. Friday night into Saturday, there is an art show. I will put this up on the website. The art show is down in Albany. I forget the name of the place, but I will be there. Maybe Allison Hosier knows where that is. I will put that out to the community. We have several of our students' art being featured in a very selective regional art show. It is open to the public, I believe, on Saturday and Friday night. We received an invitation to attend the award ceremony. So lots of good opportunities for our kids to shine in the district. We can't do that without the budget. Additionally, on our athletic fields and on our courts, our kids perform very well, not only in terms of their competition in sports. For example, the girls indoor track team won the Section 2 championship this year. Both our Columbia boys and our Columbia girls teams won the Section 2 championship in soccer this year. And at our next presentation, we'll be highlighting some other team accomplishments. In addition, we received Scholar Athlete Awards for 11. I'll repeat that. 11 of our fall athletic teams received the academic recognition because of the high grade point averages that our students who participate in our teams maintain. The sports, the arts, the clubs, the involvement supports the academic success. The research is very clear. The more that we have our kids engaged, the better the kids are going to do academically, and they're going to find things about themselves that they may not realize, as I said, and talents that will continue to serve them for the rest of their lives. Additionally, as you saw tonight, the work of the Student Council at Green Meadow, not only projects that they're doing within the school, but they are connecting to the community. Our school district is the center of the community. We often have our students, our staff, our administrators, our board, very involved in the things that are going on in the community. And we encourage, by modeling for our students, the importance of community service. We have had many opportunities for kids, particularly recently as we've gone past COVID, for our kids to re-engage with the community. Community involvement, partnerships with various community agencies and organizations help enhance programs and opportunities for our students. This is just a selection of photos from our most recent One Book, One District, One Community initiative, where our students are taking pictures of themselves as they find Vita, one of the main characters of the book, around the community. Vita is currently at the East Greenbush Community Library, and I believe that will be shifting soon to the YMCA. So if you hadn't had an opportunity to try to find Vita around town, students, staff, community, you can still find her. She'll be at the Y very, very shortly, and she's still at the East Greenbush Community Library. Additionally, Winterfest was back. Our East Greenbush Education Foundation, which is an exceptional board and organization that does so much, working with our transportation department, our district administration. We had a very successful Winterfest. That's important because it invites the community into our schools to see what we're all about. And it also shows appreciation for the community in terms of how they support the school district. We were able to bring back our district participation, our transportation department, This is not Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This is Rudolph the Red-Nosed School Bus. And our transportation department, under the direction of our new administrator, Dr. McQueen, was very active in participating in the town parade. And I think Dr. McQueen actually was mistaken for an elf at that event, because I saw somebody who looked like her walking around in an elf costume. So lots of community engagement. And again, it brings opportunities for our students, and it also shows appreciation to the community for supporting our budget. Okay, as we move into the numbers, I just want to make the board aware that we have adjusted the tax cap. This will be the tax cap that we will submit to the state. The due date for the submission of that state is approximately when, Linda, do you know?
It was March 1st.
March 1st, thank you. So the adjustment was made because when the level of revenue that you receive through payment in lieu of taxes agreements, which are pilot agreements approved by Rensselaer County IDA, when the amount of pilot revenue that you receive this year decreases next year, you can offset that loss of revenue by raising the tax levy, okay? We're not proposing to raise the tax levy 3.96, but the tax cap allows us to raise that levy up to 3.96 because 3 specific pilots are shifting from the pilot agreements to the tax rolls: FedEx, Upstate Construction, and Eastwick Village. So that's the adjustment that occurred. We confirmed that data with Rensselaer County IDA, and so our tax cap has been adjusted to reflect that. As we move into the specifics about the expenditures, I'm going to have to move a little bit closer to the screen. We've made some adjustments since March 8th, and I want to point these out for our board and community. At our last meeting on March 8th, we had proposed that we needed a full-time at 1.0 FTE to be able to provide a dedicated strings teacher, because the number of kids that are taking strings instruments at the elementary school has increased. In consultation with Scott Holliday, who is our music department chair, and our administrators, we can provide that consistent staff member to teach strings at the elementary school for a half position. So we've adjusted that expenditure down 50% from the $86,400 that was proposed to $43,200. At the Goff Middle School, we are still proposing that we restore a third assistant principal. We believe that that third assistant principal, in combination with some staffing that we're also going to be recommending, will advance the middle school concept and enable us to operate the school with better response and supervision to our students' needs and better oversight and coordination of our program. We've made some adjustments. Mr. Harkin worked with Mr. Stiles, Mr. Newman, and Mr. McHugh and Ms. Hoffman on the schedule and looking at where we might be able to share some staff between the high school and the middle school. There are some needs for some full-time positions at the high school, which are offset in some ways by some changes in other areas. So we've adjusted the proposed 2.75 FTE that we had proposed last time to 2.0, bringing the amount for the 7th and 8th grade down from the proposed $176,000 to $128,000. So everybody cheer for that reduction. Thank you. Additionally, we have talked about trying to transition our middle school back to teaming. We have also talked about the fact that our middle school is currently visiting other middle schools and looking at what they're doing in terms of the middle school, middle level education. If we add one teacher, and thanks to the work of Mr. McHugh, Mr. Newman, and Ms. Hoffman, if we just add one teacher, we can start having the kids assigned to teams. That's teachers in each core area: English, math, science, social studies, and I believe computer literacy or literacy class, have the same kids in common. So the same kids are assigned to the 5 teachers. That promotes better connections and relationships between the teachers and the students. They get to know the students better. It helps the students adjust from transitioning from the 5th grade to the 6th grade. It can be a very tough adjustment for kids as they come from a smaller elementary school into a large middle school of almost 1,000 students. It will foster better relationships between the kids themselves. They get to know each other better because they're operating on the same team. They all have the same teachers. and they get to know the teachers better, and the teachers get to know the kids better, and they can do common activities. And if there are children that are struggling or having issues, the teacher teams share and discuss that during their planning time, and they coordinate and they collaborate in ways that help the kids' problems get addressed. So what we have done here is we have maintained the recommendation for the assistant principal. We have adjusted the projected 2.75 staffing needed for 7th and 8th grade down, and we have added 1 teacher at the 6th grade level, and we've adjusted the costs. At Columbia High School, I collaborated with Mr. Jones, the athletic director. We're going to reduce the recommendation that we made last time for a 0.4 PE teacher. We're going to maintain our fitness, nutrition, and wellness coordinator, Mr. Labardi, in the federal funds for 1 more year, so he'll be fully in the federal funds. And we're not going to adjust the current part-time person that we have at the high school up to increase of 0.2. So that will be brought down to 0 additional expenditure. We talked about the need to potentially replace a reading teacher. There were 3 reading teaching positions at the high school this year. 2 of those reading teachers are retiring. We are going to shift 1 of those positions and fill it with an intervention specialist, but based on a review of students' needs, we need to maintain 2 of those 3 positions at the high school, so we'll have to hire a reading teacher to fill that position. Additionally, we are currently operating short on psychologists. We had a psychologist who was working as a retiree, who is no longer working for us. We want to increase our psychologist time about 0.6 from a current part-time person at 0.4 to 1.0. We are getting more special education referrals within the district and also from our schools, our private schools. And school districts under public law are required to provide special education services to resident students who attend private schools. But those students are residents of our district, and we're getting more referrals. And based on Mr. Coyle's recommendation, we think an increase in the staff time. The school psychologists do all the testing, they do the evaluation. There are timelines at which that evaluation needs to be completed, and we're shorthanded right now. Additionally, we previously talked about the organizational structure of our pupil personnel services. We're recommending an additional CSE chair. We are going to transition from a paper system in our human resources office where our employment files, our records, as well as our job postings are generally managed through a paper process. This system, which is called the school front system, is BOCES aidable. So there's a portion of this cost, which is estimated at $57,000. $34,704 of this cost is an initial cost in the first year, basically extra service that transitions the records. They take the records, they look at them, they put them in electronic format, they convert them to electronic format, but that's a one-shot cost. After that, it's $22,296 per year in subsequent years, and it's eligible for BOCES aid at about 63%. So it becomes more affordable after the first year of implementation. We want to continue the good work that Lisa Mahar is doing as our RTI coordinator. We are going to expand her areas, including working not only on ELA and response to intervention, but also she's looking at some of the issues that we can, some of the data and how we can support teachers better in terms of working with social emotional learning and student behaviors. And we've adjusted the professional development budget. We had asked for an additional $25,000 in general fund monies. We've been able to find monies that we can transfer from allocations within the textbook fund and in our federal Title II-A fund. So we're going to zero that out because we have other sources of revenue to pay for that. So Peter Goodwin is going to present a technology plan to provide the board a little bit more information later on regarding the expenditures that are associated with sustaining our network system, our emergency power source, as well as how we can take advantage of E-rate funding that is available to be able to continue the cycle of replacing our student devices, including our Chromebooks and our Chrome tablets. Additionally, we had proposed 4 varsity assistant coaches for boys and girls basketball and volleyball. Based on Mr. Jones's review of the number of students that might be interested, he is recommending creating a girls wrestling team. The board previously received a presentation on the Fit for Life course. We are going to purchase that equipment, and we want to spark more interest in kids participating in tennis by having an extramural program where some districts get together and they have kids as young as 6th grade competing in somewhat of a league associated with helping the kids develop an interest in tennis, which is a lifelong sport that kids can play. Additionally, in operation and maintenance, we initially budgeted a request for the dump truck that Mr. Bickle needs at $98,500. We are going to take the salter and the plow out of the additions, and Mr. Bickle has agreed to buy those items in his general maintenance equipment budget. So it would not be an addition. So it enables us to reduce the cost to $83,500. We're continuing our process of replacing all of the blinds that are quite old and dingy in some of our schools. And we have budgeted money for playground repairs, as well as we also have only 1 custodian working in the evenings at Donald P. Sutherland and Belltop. We want to have an additional person that would be shared on a rotation basis with each of those schools. In the event that we were short a sub in another building, that person would be assigned to cover in the other building. Additionally, we are proposing some additional training for transportation staff. Recently, for example, through arrangements that Mr. Jones made with Dr. McQueen, many of our bus drivers and aides participated in CPR and AED training, and that was very well received. Additionally, there was a request for additional furniture for the transportation office. We reduced that from $25,000 to $10,000, and we budgeted $100,000 in general fund money towards the pre-K. Now, if the state adjusts the pre-K allocation, which both the Assembly and the Senate versions of the budget have said that they support, it all depends on what comes out in the final budget agreement. That $100,000 may not be necessary, but we're not sure, or we may reallocate it for some other purpose, such as class sizes. We're hearing a little bit about class sizes, but we want to wait a little bit before we see what we can do about that because of the new students that are registering and the kids that are moving. So all in all, on the expenditure side of the budget, our team has reduced the overall increase by $102,000. The heating and ventilation technician has been proposed as a new position for the maintenance department. We reviewed the amount of money that we spend each year in contractual services through our vendor. We've outlined that amount here. For example, in the 22-23 school year, which is not complete yet, we have spent on bringing in an outside consultant to maintain our heating and ventilation systems. We have spent $149,472. During a full year last year, we spent more than $166,000. The previous year, we spent $194,000, and we spent $190,000. So there is an initial cost breakdown, which includes an estimated $45 an hour rate, which is a market rate for someone who has an HVAC license. So it would require somebody to have a license, breaking down the benefits. And we always budget for family insurance because we don't know what the employee will receive. So the total salary would be $136,000, $134,000, including the benefits. So right there, we can see that that itself is less than the amount of money that we have been spending on bringing somebody in to do this work. There is a need, and I did not talk about this the last time because we've been doing an extensive review of how this program would work. There is a need to purchase a vehicle, a van with the tools necessary to be able to support the position. There is a possibility that that van could potentially be purchased out of the current year's budget, but we don't know yet. We looked at other vehicles that might be able to be adapted that we have. It's really not possible given the work that others do. So after the initial investment of buying the vehicle, The total is $211,000 next year, but obviously the vehicle would not need to be replaced for some time. And we believe that this model would give us better service for our more modern heating and ventilation systems, which are computer-based, and reduce costs over time. We're also having conversations with the Little Red Schoolhouse, North Greenbush School District. They are looking for somebody to come and do inspections on their HVAC equipment, and we have not yet come to an agreement on that, but that would be a source of revenue where they would pay the East Greenbush Central School District for that HVAC technician to go there periodically to do some work for their district. So all in all, the budget at this point is projected on the revenue side. We are projecting $108,812.882. That matches with our projected budget on the expenditure side, which is $108,812. We've adjusted it from a 4.06% increase projected for next year to a 3.79% increase. We have also reduced, because we've reduced expenditures, the proposed tax levy of 1% that I proposed at the last meeting to a 0.5%. A 0.5%. Does that 0.5% would yield $291,872 to the district. And that is recurring revenue that we would be able to have not only this year to fund our program, but it has a multiplying effect in terms of what happens next year. We've had 2 years of a zero tax levy increase. This is a very small tax levy increase, 0.5%. It yields $291,872 to the district. Additionally, I want to talk about what that 0.5% tax levy might mean. And this is where we get, we're going to get into a little bit of some complicated information. Anyone who wants to know more about this and how the proposed tax levy increase may affect their individual tax bills, should know that the Board of Education only controls one of several variables that impacts an individual citizen's tax bills. The board can only decide how much to raise the levy, how much money to collect. So if the board supports a 0.5% increase, then we go out and we ask for a budget approval and we collect the money from taxpayers. As far as how that affects your tax rate, that is established and controlled to some degree by your property assessments. What is your property overall value? The board doesn't evaluate property assessments. That's done by the town assessor. Well, we have 6 towns in the East Greenbush School District, and towns assess properties differently. So there's something called equalization rates, and I'm going to explain what that means. So we've taken an example of a $250,000 full value property. And it would be logical to assume that if a house in North Greenbush could sell or has sold recently for $250,000, that homeowner would pay the same amount of taxes on that $250,000 house in North Greenbush as a homeowner in East Greenbush who has a $250,000 home, or Nassau, or any one of the 6 towns that we serve. That's not true because that does become true in general, but only after equalization rates are applied. So equalization rates take that $250,000 full value property, and the state looks at the overall total assessment of properties within that particular municipality and divides it over the full market value of those properties to determine an equalization rate. So in East Greenbush, a full value property at $250,000 on average is assessed at $220,625. We advance the slide, you can see that that is an equalization rate of about 88.25%. So in East Greenbush, properties are assessed at about 88.25% of their full market value. Looking at Skodak, properties in Skodak are assessed at approximately 79% of their full market value. And you go down the list. The only community that we serve, and we only have a few properties in Chatham that assess their properties at full market value, is Chatham at 100%. So an equalization rate of 100, it means that the community is assessing its property at full market value. So these equalization rates are used to figure out, once the board establishes the levy, how do you take that pie, the total amount of money collected, and divide it up equitably among different communities who assess their property differently. And that is done by the Office of Real Property Services, which is part of the New York State Department of Taxes. So we took $250,000 fair market value home, and it was the same data that Linda used to present the tax exemption for the volunteer firemen and the emergency ambulance services. We applied our 0.5% tax levy increase to a proposed tax levy of $58,666,419. And we used a measure of how much our property values, how much our tax base within the district is growing. And that's called the taxable growth factor. That's the same formula that's used within the tax cap to be an estimate of how much our property values, our overall tax base is growing. To figure out on average what, and it's not exact, what based on current equalization rates and based on current information that we have, the average taxpayer of a $250,000 average, meaning median, would pay next year if the board determined to raise the tax levy 0.5%. And you can see that many individuals would see no difference in their tax bill, and in some cases, their tax bills will go down. Why is that? Because we're taking a very minimal tax levy increase, and we are spreading it over a growing tax base. We have residential development, we have commercial development. Our district is growing, and we've seen that through the BRAC committee and the enrollment projection report. So we project that many taxpayers won't see a tax increase at all on their bill, and many taxpayers will see a decrease. This is assuming equalization rates. We're using current equalization rates. So those will change. Those will be adjusted in the summer. But just to show the board and the community, the current 22-23 tax rate per thousand in East Greenbush is $16.22 on a $250,000 full value property assessed at $226.25. It would go down to $16.19. Translated into the overall annual tax bill, it's a decrease of $6.62. So just to reemphasize, this is a very small tax levy increase. It raises $291,000 of revenue for the district, which is recurring. It's small in comparison to the rate at which the tax base is growing in the district. And so many district residents will see either no change in their tax bill or a mild decrease in their tax bill. It doesn't mean that nobody will see an increase, but it doesn't mean that that everybody's bill will go up 0.5%. And you have a growing tax base in East Greenbush, and you're putting a very small increase to the levy being spread over a bigger pie. Additionally, currently, I mentioned that our budget is primarily in staff and benefits. We have about 76.8% of our total budget is in personnel costs. That is about the same as it was last year. It might even be a little bit less. But that includes Social Security, teachers' retirement, employee retirement, and other benefits and compensation. As we move into talking about a separate proposition to purchase buses, we have a bus purchase reserve. Monies have been authorized by the community and set aside for the sole purpose of purchasing our buses. The board funds the reserve each year, can add money to the reserve up to a max. We were proposing the purchase of 6 buses. Typically, we would, according to our schedule, replace 8 There are two schools of thought that I want to talk to you about. We may want to make an adjustment to this. One of the things that we've been thinking about is obviously by 2027, we can no longer purchase gas or diesel buses unless the law changes. By 2035, we have to be able to convert our fleet. And we've talked about in the past that that is an unrealistic timeline. However, right now, gas and diesel buses are going up about $30,000 as we look at this for next year. The average lifespan of a 66-passenger bus is approximately 10 to 14 years. So we're thinking it might be prudent to revise this, add 2 additional buses in. By the time those buses get to their lifespan, we will save ourselves some money by the period of time between the 2027 timeline and the 2035 timeline by purchasing these buses now, because we'll have a few more years with them before we have to pull them out of the fleet. So Linda's going to talk to you about this a little bit later on, but we may propose the board revising this year, tonight, after some discussion, to include the purchase of 8 buses, and Linda has a memo to pass out with you. We've had some conversations in the last couple of days. Why do we replace the buses? They're high mileage, and they were purchased many years ago. We have 2009 buses and 2014 buses listed there that are very high mileage. We think if we purchase a couple more buses now, we'll be able to use those buses through the life and save ourselves some money in terms of that period where we have to start converting to electric buses. The bus replacement cycle enables the district to collect 69% of every dollar we spend on a bus, 69 cents of every dollar we spend on a bus we get back from the state. In terms of transportation aid, that 69% goes right back into the transportation reserve. We use that 69% to replenish the reserve to buy future buses. There's a picture of it. And additionally, we've talked about the dump truck and the plan to purchase the plow and the salter out of our general fund equipment line. So between now and the final date in which the board has to adopt the budget, hopefully the state budget will pass. And we'll know exactly whether we're getting the amount of state aid that was projected in the governor's proposal, whether we're getting a little bit less or a little bit more. And once we look at final enrollment, we've left room within the budget to be able to adjust class sizes where necessary. We may have to adjust 1 to 3 positions depending on what happens with enrollment. The proposed budget will be voted on May 16th. There'll be a resolution to purchase the bus reserve, and there'll be election of 3 board members. The original timeline included an April 4th date, our next board meeting, at which we were going to ask the board to adopt the proposed budget. If the board feels that more time is necessary or discussion is necessary, we could move that to April 25th, but we would need to adopt the budget by that date to be able to meet the state timelines for advertising and posting the budget. So between now and April 4th, we'll continue to talk about the budget, collect your feedback. We could either vote on April 4th, we could have another budget workshop on April 4th, see what happens with the state budget, and perhaps vote on April 25th. Another reason to move it to April 25th is we don't have the full board here. We might want to have the full board at the next meeting to kind of take the feedback and make some of the revisions. So we're flexible about it, but April 25th is kind of the drop dead date at which we need to approve the budget. So that was a rather lengthy presentation. I tried to go as quickly as I could. I wanted to address some of the concerns that the board had last time. I'll take any questions or concerns that you have. We'd like some feedback on the overall budget, the information that we provided regarding the proposed tax levy being adjusted down to 0.5%. We want to talk a little bit at this point about the transportation reserve, and I'll take any questions or concerns or ideas that you might have. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Why do you always look at me?
Because you were writing notes.
Actually, I was doodling and thinking about fishing. No, that's a good observation. I do have some notes, and this will be easy, Jeff. I'm going to go backwards because we talked about the reserve, being that the school bus issue is an important one. Question I have, if the state did not have this law, would we be purchasing these buses?
Yeah, these 6 are really outdated. We're putting a lot into maintaining them, and there's 2 that I asked to take off the list.
Right.
Because I was looking at this originally as, let's save some money within the reserve in case we have to pay more for the electric buses. But there's a different school of thought that says, you know what, by the time we get to that point where we're going to have to recycle these buses and replace them with electric buses, these buses will be at their lifespan. They're cheaper now. So yes, they were on the list originally from the transportation department as part of the replacement schedule. I asked them to take them off, and then through conversations I had with Mike and Linda, I kind of reevaluated that.
Right, so that's where I was going with this. I would support putting the 2 additional buses. We have a need for, the cost is only going up, and trying to figure out what direction Albany is going to go in from year to year is a thing that we can't, I'm not going to think that far ahead of it. Everyone here knows my opinion on what they're trying to do to districts and unfunded mandates. So we knock that one out of the way. This next series of questions are more budget projections for the future. I like the presentation. It's well thought out. We really are prioritizing what the community wants in these budgets, and you're addressing a lot of the needs. So I really appreciate that. Going back to universal pre-K, and you had talked about waiting for some feedback on what the budget's going to be. So my question would be, not this year, but as we move forward, we need to start having the conversation. If they decide to fund this, how would we have an expanded pre-K program? And do we have the ability to have an expanded program without a huge impact in other areas? So that was kind of my thought. I personally, I would love to see the whole community have access to universal pre-K. I understand the cost and the space problems that it creates. So I think we need to start the conversation now. If Albany decides to fund this, which I would love to see, then we could hit the ground running for next year. I'm always thinking about next year's budget. Any thoughts on that?
I do have some thoughts on that. There is, there are at least twice as many applications for pre-K as we have slots right now. I don't know exactly what the number is, but last I checked 2 days ago, it was twice as many as we had slots for.
140.
So now it's a little bit more. It's 140 applications. So I take that as a signal that the community wants a pre-K, universal pre-K program. The other thing that we didn't put on the agenda tonight, but we want to talk to you about at a future meeting, is we have received a request from another community-based organization that would like to open up their building and have a pre-K program. So there are some particulars to that we need to talk about. So we have had potential another provider come forward. We would have to fund that in a similar way that we're funding the program at ECEC and with BOCES. And we just haven't had a chance to really pull that all together yet to talk with the board about.
Yeah, again, I appreciate.
I think if the formula is adjusted in such a way that we're getting more reimbursement for closer to our actual costs, it definitely will save the general fund budget moving forward. Space will still be an issue. But again, you know, depending on where the funding goes, we also have this capital project that we are still putting together, and we may be able to, if we did a feasibility study, look at expansion of facilities. It all comes down to cost and knowing whether that UPK funding is going to remain with as far as the state providing it, and that's an uncertainty.
Right, and that's my concern. So I would support. I really do believe that our community, this is a real need as families, for families today. So I appreciate you having that on the front of your radar. And that is a segue into the second question. We're getting a lot of pushback and inquiries about the classroom sizes at Belltop. And how does it relate to the budget? North Greenbush is an explosion right now with housing and business, and it's just a very big booming community. At some point, Belltop is going to reach a capacity because of, as that community outpaces it. Has there been any indication of how much longer can Belltop take the growth that North Greenbush has? Because this is going to be an ever ongoing thing. And if it is, then that goes into the capital project for spacing and things that we were just talking about with this. So
Right now, there is still one room at Belltop that is not used as a classroom every day. It is used as like a maker space, like some of the other schools have, and it is used as a meeting space. So I would say there's at least one extra classroom there that could be utilized as another section of a grade level if necessary. The other thing in regard to enrollment at Belltop, based on the projections that we're looking at right now, there are pretty low class sizes in the 4th grade. And so one of the things that may happen is there may need to be a shift of a teacher within that building to cover one of those smaller grades where those classes are going up. So right now, I think Belltop has the capacity to accommodate another classroom. And there is an ability to make a shift in the number of sections at 1st or 2nd grade by shifting a teacher internally within the building. I don't know that that will happen yet. We usually wait to see what happens with the overall enrollment. But when we rezoned a few years ago, and some of the kids that were in neighborhoods that went to Belltop went to Janae and Red Mill, we fixed that problem to the point where there is space available right now to add classes. But we also try to look at that distribution of sections across the entire district to make sure that it's equitable. And at this point in time in the year, a lot can change. Kids can move out of the Belltop area to another district, to another school. We could have more kids coming in to kindergarten that require us to look at kindergarten overall, the number of sections. Right now, as it stands, we think somewhere between 2 sections additional will be needed at Janae, possibly 1 at Belltop, and possibly going down at one other school. So I think it's a +2 or a +3. Is that right? Depending on what we do. But right now, I think it's between +1 and +2 overall K-5.
So as we go forward and thinking about capital projects and class sizes, if we have to do a project to add a classroom or facilities to a certain school, have we, and I apologize, you may have already talked about this, have we made an assessment what building would be best for that?
We haven't made that assessment. We have to convince the state that we don't have room to put the kids in the existing number of classrooms, and that typically requires a capacity study be done. We have asked our architects to do a capacity study in terms of how the schools are being utilized right now. One of the things that often happens is when the state looks at its numbers, it says, well, you can put 27 kids in a classroom, and according to the formula, but realistically, to be able to provide the program to the kids that we expect, putting 27 kids in a classroom is really a financial calculation, not an academic one. So they may often think you have more space than you actually do as far as operational space. The other thing that has happened when the buildings that are built in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, you didn't have as many special education services in the schools. You didn't have as many academic intervention services. You didn't need spaces for psychologists and counselors. So the buildings are being utilized very differently now when they were first designed. And in some ways, the state formula doesn't acknowledge that. They count the number of classrooms times 27 in general, count a little bit more for special ed, and then they figure out whether or not you can justify an addition to a building. And additions generally cost more local taxpayer money than renovations, because the state doesn't aid it at the same rate.
Right.
So we are looking at all of that, though.
Good. I think that's really important. And the other part of this, and just to make an observation, when we go to Belltop with our board meeting, maybe we should have a presentation, because we seem to get a reoccurring theme that every time there's a bubble in the classrooms and we have to increase class size a little bit, people react to that. And they always come back to, well, I moved to here because this school is this way today. Well, I think part of our conversation is explaining to, in a more meeting with public access, and tell them, what actually governs, because you do a very good job of that in responding to folks, but I think it just seems to be a reoccurring issue, and it was for as long as I've been on the board, to no fault of anyone. It's just, there's things that go on in North Greenbush and the building that we just can't control. And just, it's more of a messaging thing. So that you answered all my questions, and I really appreciate the depth of thought that went into this.
Thank you, John.
Anyone else? So I have just a couple comments. Really good. I really think we've done a really good job narrowing it down and bringing down the rate a little bit more. I think the presentation is really important to explain to the residents that you're most likely not even going to have a tax increase on this. Excuse me. However, I do want to push us a little bit and say, is there anything we can still purchase in 22's budget that will even help us a little in 23 still? I know we're moving some things back and forth. So can we consider even more on that? And then the other thing that always comes up kind of a little bit late is health insurance, and whether we're having any rebates on the health insurance, that we might have some savings. And I kind of remember those things coming in, always having a little bit of savings. So just stuff that I'd like to hear about as we move closer to finalizing it on, have we kind of closed the gaps on those things? Have we moved things if we can? And kind of go forward from there.
I would say, and I'll ask Linda to comment, the benefits projections that are included within the budget are accurate projections of our expenditures for next year. And there isn't a lot of further adjustment that we believe we could make to those. It's more closer to the actual than what we've done in the past.
Okay.
The other thing that we've done, the budget is tighter than it has been in the past. We don't take, for example, a new BOCES program or the pre-K program or something that gets added and simply added on top of the budget. We look very closely line by line at our expenditures. We say, could we not, where is it that we haven't been spending money, and we find room within that existing budget. So we've done that with the health insurance lines, and we're much tighter than we actually have been in the past.
Right. In the past, I think had pretty high estimates, and then we would come in and lower it towards the end.
Yeah, we had significant increases in our health insurance rates for next year. Our CDPHP plan is going up 14.2%, and our Highmark Blue Shield plan is going up 9.8%. And then the market increase for prescription is 6.6. So the line item has been increased, but not at that rate. And so in order to accommodate that, we're using some of the reserve that we have for our prescription reserve. And we'll be forecasting to use a little bit of that next year.
Do you think there's risk beyond that then? I mean, if we're not budgeting enough of an increase, do we have risk that we might be short later on and that we won't have the reserve?
No, the prescription reserve, we should have about 4 months claims in the reserve. We currently have about 6 months.
Okay. All right, good. And then lastly, for me, I completely agree. I think we need to have the other board members at least chime in before we proceed ahead. But I do think we made great progress, and I'm very happy with it. I also support the buses as well at this point. So I'm okay having a conversation about that tonight and trying to move forward.
So what will happen there is Linda's going to pass out something, and when we get to the point where you have to approve the resolution to go out with the notice, we're going to have to change the numbers. And Linda has those numbers on a memo. And I talked to Mike about that today as well. So,
anything else?
What else?
I just want to say I really like the idea of going back to the teams and staff and the increase of staff that's necessary there. That's such a critical time as the kids transition from elementary school. I know my kids were able to have the teams. And, that ended up being their friend pool all through middle school. Important for the kids and for
So just on that, when did we stop doing teams? I didn't realize.
There were significant staff cuts that needed to be made, I think 2009.
Okay, so it's been a
around
while.
2009, before the 2010 school year, because of the gap elimination adjustment. And, you know, you really have no choice when you don't have that revenue, but to do the best you can to reduce staff and keep the school functioning, and that's what was done. That's when the assistant principal was reduced as well. So it's a partial teaming right now. Not all of the kids are assigned to the same teacher because you don't have enough teachers in the schedule to be able to make it work. What this would do additionally would, the special ed teacher would also be able to collaborate with the team regarding kids that are in there placed in those classrooms in the 6th grade level. So it's bringing back something that was in place that is considered to be by many middle level organizations best practices for middle schools, that those kids have the same teachers in common because of the relationships. And we'll start with 6th grade, and you'll probably expect next year, we'll look at the enrollment in 7th and 8th grade and see what we can do. And again, combination with this, Jim McHugh and the team are taking the staff in various groups out to different middle schools. Next week they're going, I think it's next week, to Farnsworth Middle School, look at their schedule. They went to Bethlehem a few weeks ago, and they're going to be bringing a presentation to the board on what they're looking at and what they're discovering as they look at other schools. So this is part of a process that we're trying to follow to enable them to implement some of the practices that once were working very effectively, but also to look at new things that are going on in other schools and bring them back to Goff. And that's something that the board said they wanted to see.
Absolutely. I'm fully in support of that as well. It's important for social relationships to be stronger in 6th grade.
I have a wonderful science teacher chair who's waiting to do his presentation. So I'm going to, if there's any further questions later on, I'm going to get off the stage here. But I'm going to leave the microphone.
So yeah, my bedtime's normally. Oh, did you turn it on? No, it's on. It's on. Okay. All right. It's like 8:30, so forgive me if I'm a little punchy here. Honors physics is the presentation that we're talking about right now, and I'm going to go through a little bit of like the reasons why and why it's a good idea, and I'm going to start with where we are now. We have a pretty complicated like branching science program, like lots of different pathways for kids to go through, inroads, on ramps, off ramps, all of these kinds of things. But I'm simplifying it, really just talking primarily about honors track students. If you have any adjacent questions, I can certainly entertain those, like what would happen if, or what about this. But just for brevity's sake and for simplicity's sake, I'm going to keep it to like a fairly straightforward, typical track, I would call it. There's a clicker here. Am I doing that? You doing it? Present. See, yeah. That's where we are now. All right. I can't. I gotta do this. I'm sorry. Can't see. All right. So at present, our honors track, our typical honors track in 8th grade would take earth science. Okay. They take the regents at the end of the year, and after that, they move on to honors biology, typically. Right. So this is not everybody, but typically. All right. And then they move on to honors chemistry, typically. And then beyond that, what we would like them to do, and what we recommend that they do, is to take AP Physics 1. Okay, so hold that, and that's what we would like them to do. We would also like them, right, because these are our honors kid. These are kids who say, like, I love science, I want to do science, maybe as a career, maybe as a technical field, maybe as some kind of medical field, right? So we're trying to encourage them to expand those horizons, as every department does. Like, keep coming to us, take more and more and more, all right, because that's the passion that we have. So we like them to take extra classes as well. And in fact, many of our students do. So we have, upwards of like 50 or so, like scheduled for next year, students who are going to be taking multiple sciences, which is great. And that's a push in the right direction, whereas the last few years, it's been quite a dip down in those numbers. And I won't get into the nitty gritty of that, but just keep in mind of that. All right, and so some of these AP electives that we have are listed right there. Heard about them recently in program review and all these kinds of things. They're great programs, and we want to encourage our kids to be involved in those. With that being said, the other thing that we need to take a look at is what is our program doing for these kids? And what is the goal of our program? Not only like are we getting them enrolled in these courses, but what is the long-term outcome for these kids? And so AP Physics 1 has a problem, and its main problem is that it's got to do double duty for these kids right now. It's an AP course that the exam terminates in May, typically, and then they're also currently enrolled in the Regents curriculum as well, which means they have to take the Regents exam in June. And those two programs are not aligned. All right. This truly does a disservice to the content because the AP curriculum represents about half of the Regents curriculum and at a much higher level. So we are teaching in a Regents course, we're getting through that material by December, and in this course, that same material is being stretched out to the middle of May this year. So our exam is, I think, May 13th this year, which means from May 13th to June 23rd, when our exam is, I have to teach the second half of the course to those kids. And these are our best and our brightest kids that want this material. And so we go from diving deep and exploring all these different avenues, all these different options, to just scratching the surface and just saying, here's what it is, and move on. Here's what it is, here's what it is. And because there's no other way to get through it. And that's a problem. A lot of these kids are going to go on to fields like they want to be doctors maybe, or take the MCATs. And physics is a part of the MCATs. And for some of these kids, this may be the time that they really get their physics. Like they may score well on this AP exam and they may test out of something in college, and they then aren't prepared. They haven't seen all this material. Or they're going to take a freshman physics class and having never seen a huge portion of the material. So I see that as a problem. That AP may not be adding more. They kind of pushed it back a little bit. But it's really difficult. Every other course that we have, you take the preliminary course, like for example, you take chemistry or chemistry honors, and then you take AP chemistry. You take biology or biology honors, and then you take AP biology. This is really the only primary core science course that we would just dump kids right into their junior year into an AP course. And many of these students have not taken an AP science course before, and they are scared away from it. So we have upwards of 60 students in honors chemistry, and this year we have 15 in AP chemistry. All right, and just as a cursory anecdotal rationale, these students are often citing scared of AP, right? Part of that is COVID, right? They're coming off of all these different problems that we all know about and talked about a lot. But part of that is the reality that they want to take multiple sciences, and if they have to take AP, say chemistry and AP physics, that's too scary. Doubling up in 2 AP sciences as your junior year, it's probably a bit too much. And that, coupled with some of the disservices that we do to the content itself, I think that leads students away from the course and just in general away from doubling up in sciences. So we're closing the door on these kids because of the scariness factor and because of all some of these things that we've talked about here. The other problem is that I have with just AP in general, is that it's a high stakes test. The entire credit is based upon one day, one test. How are they doing that day? What's going on that day? And this is a tough test. This is ranked among of the more difficult exams that there are. So last year in 2022, only 43% of the students received a passing grade. That's a 3 or better. It's all right. I should move some more.
I don't know.
Come here. Oh, I don't want to get feedback. All right, well, we can do it in the dark.
You're just getting ready to go to sleep.
Yeah, this is helping me. My watch kept trying to put me to bed as I'm sitting over there. All right, so thanks, Mr. Garrett. Oh, and by the way, I went to Green Meadow. I had Mr. C. It's amazing to be back here. I meant to start with that, but I was really excited when I found out that it was going to be here. I don't get to come back to Green Meadow as often as I would like, and so I don't know. It's cool. So anyway. But they didn't have these lights when I was here. They just stayed on, right? So what was I saying? Oh yeah, high stakes single day, single exam. 43% got a 3 or better, and only 25% of students got a 4 or better. And these are the kids that are going to institutions that require a 4 or a 5 for it to count as credit. And many of these institutions are also saying, we don't even want AP because we want your money. Okay? So what are we going to do? Like, what's the plan? Oh, yeah, I already mentioned this. Okay. So what are we going to do? Here's the future. See, that's pretty, okay, let's go. All right, so honors physics, what is it? It's going to be basically the Regents course like plus, like all our other honors programs are. So we're going to hit the entire Regents curriculum. It's going to be fully aligned to the Regents exam, and then we're going to be able to dive into the kind of depth we're currently doing in AP, right? But at the Regents aligned level. So we're going to hit all those things at the way that these kids deserve to get it. All right. It's an improvement for all the reasons that we've already talked about, right? It's going to give the kids what they want and what will be beneficial to them in the future. And honestly, the Regents curriculum is a good curriculum. It's a survey course. It hits a lot of the major topics. It falls very much in line with what kids can expect to see in their, like, say, introductory physics courses in college that they're likely be taking, right? But an algebraic level as opposed to a calculus level that they might see as they continue on. So not having all of the curricular elements that like AP1 has, it's far and above the best choice. The future is that we move into a second-year college physics course. All right. So we have 2 upper-level physics courses beyond, so we have Regents physics. All right. We have hopefully honors physics, and then we're going to have two courses above that. One is an algebra-based college physics, which is what we're talking about here in conjunction with this, and one is a calculus-based AP Physics C. Right, and that's going to be a future issue to talk about it as well. So the college physics course, we've already had meetings with Mr. Harkin and various administrative staff, right, with Hudson Valley and SUNY Albany in terms of partnering with them to bring a college level course into the class, right? Something that we've been looking to do for a while, and this is an opportune time to do it. The college physics course we'd have a lot of freedom, right? So I've talked to Hudson Valley, and I've talked to SUNY Albany in terms of how we teach it. So we could teach it the way our kids want it to be taught, the way that we in our community want it to be taught. And then we would make sure that we hit all these curricular elements. Kids would get in the college physics course, and again, this is a little bit future, but just so you know, kids would get something that is very much aligned to the college. So that they would be able to transfer that and be meaningful, and all of these things, which I think we can all say are very positive. It's different for the fact that we could include the elements that are more closely aligned to what a college physics course would be, which the AP currently isn't. And in fact, in 2020, they took out elements. They took out sections 8 to 10. So now there's only 7 topics in there. So it's not going in the right direction. So here's a little bit about what it will look like. So again, this is currently what we have. And this year, again, the typical student that's in the honors track would go from honors chemistry, all right, into AP Physics 1 and AP Physics C. So I'm leaving off the doubling up in science right now. We're just looking at, like, these kids are going to continue on in physics, right? So again, not everybody has to take like Physics C, but I'm a physics teacher, so. Next year will be a transition year, so that students who were anticipating taking an AP physics course in their junior year will still have the opportunity to do that. So next year I'll be trying to do double duty and getting through the AP curriculum at the AP level, using the AP Classroom website to prepare students for an AP exam, as well as making sure I get through the Regents curriculum at an honors level that they would appreciate. So it'll be a tough year, but want to make sure students have the ability to, get in what they had planned to get in. Beyond that, we're going to have a couple of options for these kinds of students. So they'll go from honors chemistry to honors physics, and they can do college physics after that, or they can do AP Physics C after that. And we're anticipating helping students try to understand the career path, what courses would be best for them. So putting into the program of studies something that's going to give them an idea of, like, say, hey, if you want to be going to engineering or computer science, right, you probably want to eventually get to AP Physics C, a calculus-based course that's going to help prepare you for the kind of academic career that you're going to have, right? Or if you're going to go into the medical or social sciences, right, college physics is going to be a good option. And try to provide them as much information about those kinds of things as possible. Yeah. So this is what it could look like in the future. Just the whole thing, top to bottom, coming from earth science all the way down to the, so this again, medical sciences, potentially, you're going to take in your junior year honors physics with AP chemistry, college physics and AP biology, again, MCATs as college physics on it, or if you're looking into nursing, again, physics is an important thing, radiology, all these fields. And then engineering, you have a slightly different thing. Right? And these are just examples, so just something, food for thought. So hopefully that wasn't too fast or too slow. Did I hit it? Did I nail it? All right, good. All right. So any questions for me?
Tom, I have a question,
Yeah.
just real quick. When you say college physics, are you looking at an agreement with a college that would offer college credit for that? And which colleges do that currently?
So, Siena. So I've had. I'm actually friends with the physics department chair at Siena. So John Moustakis, he's come and spoken to my classes and to Science National Honor Society. He's a great guy. That's one option. SUNY Albany is another option, and so is Hudson Valley. We've met with Hudson Valley, and they're the first step in the process. They're getting through to SUNY Albany.
And again, when we get to that point, I think that the first step for that transition to happen would be to have the honors physics course added to our curriculum, and then be able to look beyond that. And then we'll weigh the kind of the pros and cons of what program to go with. Sometimes going with a SUNY Albany can be beneficial because you have a large group of our graduates going to SUNY schools, and they all would accept the SUNY credit, as opposed to going with Siena doesn't necessarily have to transfer. So we'll kind of weigh all of that.
Does Hudson Valley work like SUNY as well?
Hudson Valley works like SUNY as well, yes.
So I want to say that I think I'm probably the youngest board member, right? So probably the one who went to high school last. And I did take different AP, and I took university at high school. And there was a huge difference, right, in which colleges would accept what. And the university and high school, which I'm assuming would equate to this college physics class, transferred in no problem. Your AP are the ones that it was like no rhyme or reason, or couldn't understand why you would have to retake the class, or you have to prove like a syllabus based how you met the criteria. And I think I took university at high school, and I found that to be most beneficial. I feel like for my trajectory and my looking at college, it gives you the opportunity to then have more freedom and choice when you get to college and what to take. So I think the choice for students is always a good thing. I'm not going to pretend to understand the difference between the classes that you went over really quickly. But in generally speaking, I think that the choice of AP or, college, university, high school, whatever we call it, I think that that's a great thing.
So just one more question. So when would we get a proposal for the college? Is that next year you guys are thinking?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'd work with Mr. Stiles and Mr. Simons just to figure out what the best plan of attack would be. I mean, so we're trying to make sure this is in foundation so that they can be prepared for that kind of rigor.
And I also agree with Emily. I think it's important to have the option of AP or honors. It covers more students. Some of them can't really handle the rigor of AP, but really want to be challenged more. And I think this gives them that opportunity. So it captures more.
Yeah, and it's like, sorry to interrupt, I feel like you're not putting all of your weight on how you performed on that one test and what score you got at 3, 4, whatever. I think the university and high school, and then that feels more like how, you would perform in college anyway. And that the longevity and it's more of the marathon, not just you show up on one day and take a test.
So just to be clear, the honors, so next year would be a transition year where it was both honors and AP, and then after that it would just be the honors.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I didn't want to misrepresent anything. Ms. Taylor, you had something?
Yes, just a quick question. question. I appreciate all the options given to the kids. I just want to segue for a second. You talked a lot about medical fields, kids going into medical fields. Can we talk for a second why there is no anatomy and physiology class?
So the long history or the,
Or how we can make changes to make that happen.
So-
I think we're doing a disservice to our kids.
so I would, that is a course that we'd love to have, 100%. And there has been interest that has ebbed and flowed, so I was hopeful in the early days when we were of distance learning that was going to be a gateway for us to get kids interested and enrolling in that course. And it didn't pan out. I 100% agree that that's a hugely beneficial for kid for all different. You want to go into exercise science, boom, you need that. You want to go be a PE teacher, boom, like you need that. You have to take on that in 1 and 2, like so. So I 100% agree. I'm hopeful again that maybe we can do that. Like next year normally we have like between 20 and 25 kids sign up for AP Biology. Next year we have 43. So maybe the trend is going. Maybe the time to start looking at that again is happening.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Just a comment. Thank you. And I like your approach. It's really about branding. Things have changed. Times have changed the way we look at it. My children probably went to college when Emily's went to college, so I understand. But also as a parent,
Thing with the high school with your daughter.
yes, you did. I know. I was waiting for you to say that. I served you a softball and you hit it out the park. Good job.
Yeah.
See that you haven't stayed up too late.
Right. Yeah.
What's most important, I think, in the branding part of it, not only for the students but the parents. And I think this is great. I think the way you're laying it out is really good. But what's really important, a lot of parents don't understand when they sign up for the university or AP or college, that my children all went to private schools. So I had that experience as a parent. They did all this stuff, and it had a value to them as their teachers and their relationships and things like that. But they had to do a lot of do-overs, and because of the schools that they chose. So I think when we brand this and when we talk about this, that we put the emphasis that if the state school is the best bang for your buck, that the parents understand also, along with the students, because so much of the college experience now is financial as well, with the cost of schools and things like that. So I love challenging kids. I think, at all levels, we're adding rigor and great job. So, and I'll tell her you said hello.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that it has to be, there's legitimacy, right? With what school you partner with and how that child can then take that into their collegiate career.
Right.
You have to have that agreement, and you have to be able to stand by that. Otherwise, to me, it's not worth it.
Well, you get a lot of surprises. I've had people have that conversation with us saying, I thought I was doing this, and they decided to last minute. It's not the district's fault, to go a different route, I think just when we're having the conversations with all the stakeholders, that they understand that this is partnered with a state system, and that if you go, and nobody ever talks about, they kind of brush over if you go to the private thing. Well, maybe they'll take it or they're not going to take it. I can tell you 3 different private schools, they didn't take it. And I think that's the general experience, but it's still worth taking the class. I don't want anyone to think that, but just knowing what you're getting out of it, I think. And so good job.
And if I can just comment, I think guidance and Mr. Herkin, I give them applause because I think they are very honest with the students now, and they're very forward. Right. If a student is being too challenged, they'll say, this isn't worth it for you. Like, It's probably not going to be accepted. Put yourself down to, the different level or different class, because it's just too much on you. So I do think you guys do a great job at Columbia on communicating that when needed. So I appreciate that.
One other really quick question. What's the price difference between the AP physics and what a college physics class would be?
So I think right now the pricing and Dan, maybe you know what the AP through. No, you don't. Okay, fine. All right, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see if you're still listening to me. All right, yeah. So I don't 100% know the answer to that off the top of my head. I do know that Siena was obviously the most expensive, and then Hudson Valley was the least expensive, and SUNY Albany was closer in approximation. But
per credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, per credit.
Yeah.
Right, that's, if you're taking it in college, it's definitely 600 to 800, but I know when my kids took the classes, it was like
it's
250
usually a
or-
third of the price. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
usually
Well, so yeah.
Okay.
It's about a third, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's
if they
standard.
can get any college credits they can
Exactly.
get in high school, it's a bargain compared to what they have to pay for further out.
Yeah.
And the district absorbs that cost?
The
Families
parent
do.
pays for the test.
So what if the family can't?
There's a source of funding that we utilize to cover that.
Yeah.
They let the counselor know or the administration know there's a source of funding that covers for kids who can't afford the tuition costs for the college credit courses.
That's true for the AP exams as well.
Yes.
Any other comments?
So there's a resolution later on to ask you to approve the course. I'm hearing no objections to it, and I feel there's a lot of support. Just one quick point I wanted to mention that you did highlight, because you're starting the honors course next year. One of the things that you talked about was the fact that you're jam-packing the curriculum to get the kids ready for the Regents and the AP Physics, and you feel you're doing a disservice to some of the key concepts that they need to learn for AP Physics and Regents, right? It's kind of like you're being pulled in two different directions.
Yes.
To cover double the curriculum, right?
Yeah.
At a certain period in the year. The honors curriculum would still challenge the kids with a rigor more so than a Regents level course, but the Regents level course, but you feel there'd be better alignment from the honors course to the Regents course so that you wouldn't be rushing through basically to try to cover things, and you can go more in depth. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's the benefit of the honors course, and then you're leading into the college.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Employee attendance now?
Yes, I'm going to briefly go over that. I'm not going to do a full presentation. Periodically in the past, the board has asked us to report on employee attendance. There is a big budget area of the budget that board members have been concerned about in terms of substitute costs. Marissa Cannon, who could not be here tonight, has a report on the board agenda that covers the period from September through January. In general, comparing teacher attendance, for example, from last year to this year, from the period of September to January, it is slightly improved, and the substitute coverage rate has improved. We have had some instances of some days recently during the months of February and March where we have not been able to cover all classes, where those days, the number of teacher absences has been spiked higher than what we saw between September and January. Additionally, the report includes looking at teaching assistants and other non-instructional positions, including bus drivers. We have had concerns about encouraging good attendance among all bargaining groups and employee groups because the kids need the service. And in recent months, we have had a pretty significant spike in the number of bus drivers who are calling in. I did talk to the Transportation Department about that. We're going to continue to provide some data to the board regarding this. It's really important as we have returned to really normal operations that all of our employees be mindful of the need for them to be in the buildings or on the buses or providing the services to the kids unless there's a permissible reason to be out, such as being sick. We don't want anybody to come to school sick, but we also need people here, and we want to see our attendance rate in all categories improve. And I do have substitute cost information that Mrs. Taylor, and I will pass that out at the next board meeting.
Just a quick question on the substitute. We made the increase in the rates, was it last year?
Yes.
that's got to be the biggest reason, do you think, that we're able to fill all the call-ins, or is there?
I think it's a
more people?
combination of factors. We do have more. We have increased the number of subs that we have. We have people out for fewer periods of time, for period days if they do have COVID, and the rate of COVID has gone down dramatically. So we see that reflected in the data. I do think the increased rate has made a difference. And we have talked also about the fact that we want to attract our retired teachers to sub in our district, and both in the short-term daily subbing, but also in long-term substitute positions that are maternity leave positions and those kinds of things. And we think the higher rate is justified, but we think it makes a difference. We're doing the same thing regarding our substitute rates as every other district, and we're competing for the same pool of subs.
Yep, and we talked about that when we approved it.
Right.
I just would like to talk, I want to dig a little deeper, and I think my biggest thing is that we hold the kids accountable to be here on time. What example are we setting if we have absenteeism, call-ins on a frequent basis, on a routine basis, following vacations? I guess I'd like to see us dig a little deeper to see the absenteeism around vacations, around certain days. And then I would like to look, like you just said, what is this costing the taxpayers?
Internally, we've talked to the administrators, and we've talked with some of our bargaining units about this. We are looking internally at the data regarding what we consider to be more than typical absences among employees, and having conversations about every bargaining unit is a little different. Every contract is a little bit different in terms of the expectations and the protocols, but we're having that conversation internally about how to address those issues.
And I understand that, and most of the staff uses it appropriately.
That's right.
And, they are entitled to that, and I understand that and appreciate that, but abuse is not fair to the children, it's not fair to the taxpayer.
Agreed. Thank you, Joanne.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, I think Peter, you're up next?
Yes. Just give me a quick second.
Peter is known for his efficiency. And,
I think that's a hint.
He's going to, I'll set you up for success on this one, Peter, okay? There is an expenditure item in the budget that increases our technology budget by more than typical. And that expenditure item was asked for more information about it at the last meeting. So I asked Peter to briefly show how the initial expense to improve our network and our protections for our network will yield revenue stream from E-rate, which is a federal program, and fund our Chromebook replacement schedule. You're on.
That's correct. So the Chromebook Sustainability Program is part of, it's into really a strategy to try to leverage funds that are not local funds, sources, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Try to do this quickly. The first project highlights.
It's on, Peter.
Yeah, it's on.
That one's on.
Oh, so you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Wow, I can't hear that. You can hear me. That's good. Okay, so all students now, K through 12, have a device. That's 4,072 students. We are currently in the process of completing our rollout to K1. The K1 have recently been supplied with touch-capable devices that look like a Chromebook but convert into a tablet. Much more usable, been very positively received. Okay, so another thing I wanted to tell you is that 89% of the teachers at Columbia and Goff use Google Classroom to assign classwork to their students.
That's an amazing statistic right there. I mean, the rate of adoption and the really the verification of how useful these devices have become, how necessary in our classrooms these devices have become. That's a really powerful statistic. It's similar in the elementary schools. If you look at the amount of classwork, I have a program that can do that. That's assigned the tasks. You see that it does vary by grade level, and it varies by building a little more than the middle school and the high school, but very high rates of adoption. On average, each week, our students, and that's only students, visited over 160,000 websites. And greater than 95% of the students that are 3-8, I wrote K-8 there, I just noticed that, they will complete 3 ELA local district benchmarks using the STAR Renaissance program that runs on the Chromebook. And they will also complete 3 math local district benchmark assessments. So that's a really meaningful statistic. It's the first year that we've done that. This is tied directly to our technology plan that we talked about for 2022 through 2025. And that has helped to create a really, really beneficial culture around the data, okay? Not only do we capture the data a lot quicker than we used to be able to, but we can actually talk about the data in really meaningful and helpful ways because of the advanced reporting that we have available to us through Renaissance, and also through Lisa O'Har's efforts to organize data teams in each school. And what that allows us to do is to act upon the data and intervene sooner with a student who may be struggling in reading or math. We also use that data with a number of the platforms that we've added, all available through the Chromebooks, that they talk to Renaissance, they read that data, and they can give a suggestion to the teacher about the next thing that the child is ready to do. Freckle does that, ELA and math. We have Lalilo for the younger kids, and we have the Mayan reading, all integrated with our Renaissance program, all available to our students because of the Chromebook one-to-one program. Now, there are some challenges for our Chromebook program ahead, okay? I don't know how else to say it. We've been lucky. We had a really good use of our Smart Schools money, and we played that out for as long as we could. We have some of that left over. And then there really wasn't much in way of a silver lining of the COVID pandemic, but there was some additional funding made available to the district. And Linda Wager made a very wise decision because the Smart Schools funding does not expire, but the federal funding that was available during COVID does. So we decided to use that funding for the second phase that I'm just completing of Chromebook rollout. So we were kind of lucky to have an advantage of those funds. We can't predict if funding like that will ever become available again, but there's one thing that we do know is that there are more challenges ahead for the Chromebook program. What are 2 of those challenges? Well, starting this October, the College Board people have let people know that the PSAT testing is going to be done on Chromebooks, okay? It's all computer-based testing. So a student absolutely has to have a working device in good working order. Not only that, they have to remember to bring it in on the day of the test and make sure it's fully charged, okay? And they're gonna have to remember, you know, my screen is cracked, my trackpad isn't working. They have to be with it enough to get that taken care of before they come into the test. Because if you come into the test and it's in the middle of administration and you have a malfunction, what I'm being told by the people who proctor these tests is, that's it. You know, test is ended, it's not valid. See you at the next administration. And I really don't want to be responsible for that. You know, so I'm trying very hard to find ways to put us in the best possible position for success in a high stakes testing environment. And guess what? The SATs are moving to that too. We'll experience that later next year. But that's even more complicated. It's complicated in terms of the Chromebooks. It's complicated in terms of staffing. We offer that on Saturdays. And we don't just offer it to our students. We offer it to students from outside our district. And their computers won't work on our network. So we have to get extra computers to accommodate those students that we're also giving tests to. So again, super high stakes. If something happens with your Chromebook during your SAT and your test is invalidated, well, you may not be able to complete your college application on time because the admissions department at the colleges you're applying to may be waiting for your scores, but they can't have your scores until you can take a test in a valid way. So another thing I don't want to be responsible for. So we're looking. Now also, we were told 3 through 8 that the annual assessments in ELA and math must be done. We're going to start in the spring of 2024 with grades 5 and 8. So we have to begin prepping for that. They'll be using their Chromebooks to take those. The following year, we add on the 4th grade and the 6th grade, and then the following year, all grades 3 through 8 will have to take their state assessment in ELA and math on a Chromebook. Big challenges. When you think about a Chromebook, I always think about my phone, almost like clockwork. Every 2 years, I have to replace my cell phone. I think about it that way because a cell phone is a consumer electronics device. So is a Chromebook, and it's a less durable one, okay? Their average life is 3 years, okay? So my essential question in talking to you tonight is to help you understand how badly a strategy is needed to have timely replacement of these units, to keep them in good working order, and to ask the question, what will it take to sustain this program, okay? So, oops, went too fast. There are basically 3 funding sources that are available to us to do this. We have our local taxpayer funds in the general fund, okay? We have what's left of the smart schools funded by New York State. And the third category are federal funds, which aren't necessarily for Chromebooks. They're actually for networking projects. But what I'm talking about is a strategy that will help leverage that money because some of that money, 50% of it, is aidable to the district. Let me give you an idea of what I mean. So here, the district, this is what the cycle looks like. The district would spend money on an eligible network project. I'll get into that a little further. And then the district is reimbursed 50% of the cost of that project. It's an E-rate program is funded by the FCC and renewed every 5 years for each district. And then what happens is something kind of creative. We are able to get that 50% refund back, but we can appropriate that money and apply it directly to purchases of Chromebooks if the board chooses to do that. We actually do that already. Every year, it's usually springtime, sometimes it's summer. We will get a prorated amount of E-rate money back from NERIC. Okay, so there are some things that we get for our network, like our firewall, or some of our internet. They charge us for that, and then because that's an E-rate expense that they make, they get a refund from the FCC, and then they give us our prorated share, and other districts get their prorated share. So every year I write a letter of appropriation to the board, to Mr. Simons and the board, and you've usually been approving, it's usually around $50,000. So using that strategy, just growing it a little bigger is what the idea is here. So, well, why should we invest in our network? Well, here's an example. Right now, this year, we've experienced a major problem for health and safety, okay? We have cell phone signal that has switched to a 5G format, doesn't travel as far into our buildings, and that affects our ability to send text messages to alert of a lockout, or to just even allow any kind of a cell phone conversation or text messages to happen inside our buildings. It's pretty bad. I've been hearing about it a lot. I've been researching a lot of different ways to fix the problem, And the one I think that is the most efficient for us is to expand our wireless access point network. That is E-ratable. So we would take wireless access points and we'd put them in those hallways, which we didn't focus on before. Before we focused just on our instructional spaces. We would put them in the lobbies. We would put them in areas where they're not. For instance, in the areas in maintenance, in some of the buildings, there's no wireless down there. And if that's part of health and safety, that needs to be included too. So we could take some of this money that is available for refund. For instance, I've looked at how much that would cost to do for our district. It's about $202,000. That means that we'd get $101,000 back as a refund at the end of the year. I would write a letter of appropriation, and if you would approve it, then I'd be able to specifically funnel that refund into the Chromebook program. So over a 4-year period of time, that can actually generate quite a bit of money. And I'll show you exactly how much in a little while. But again, the steps here are threefold. I'm recommending that we do an $80,000 increase in our local taxpayer-funded hardware budget. We have a hardware budget. It's called computer equipment, DW for district-wide. Okay, it's got an initial appropriation of $70,000, and I'm recommending that we bring that portion up another $80,000 so that we have that portion to build on. But I want to really lower the impact on the local taxpayer. That's our huge part of this plan. So we take the $840,000 remaining in smart schools, and we plan to use that every year a little bit until 2027, because my goal was to develop a plan that would give us sustainability for at least 4 years. Okay? We only really need at this time to talk about 2024, because we're talking about 2024's budget. But it's really important for you to know what the grand plan here is. What's the strategy here? It's part of a bigger plan. And then here we have that E-rate funding. We actually have $681,026 in the current 5-year wave of funding. Okay, that money does expire, unlike smart schools, right? And our last opportunity for that funding cycle is in 2025. So this plan includes 2 bites at that fund. We won't get it all, but we could make a major impact and lower the cost of sustaining this program for our taxpayers this way. And if the FCC decides to re-up the program, which I really have no information that they're not going to do that. I think they might actually, because of cybersecurity concerns, they might actually expand the program. But we won't know until 2026 when they reauthorize the fund. So Congress would have to do that. So that was a lot to take in, and I know it's been a long evening. Any questions on the 3 funding sources?
So the 80,000 that you list here is already in the proposed budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Other questions? No?
I have a question. So
Yes.
the 202, which we would get back 50%, the 202 is in the budget, correct? Yes. But technically, we're getting back half of that.
Yes.
Next year.
Next year, revenue.
Next year.
Yes.
Right. It actually happens, I think, at the end of the fiscal year. Like they tell me that it comes the same year, but it feels like the next year by the time you get
So
it.
the $80,000 expenditure for devices and the $220,000 expenditure for Wi-Fi,
Yep.
and then there's another expenditure for the
UPS.
which is protection of the system if there's a power outage.
Yep.
They have to be expensed in the budget
First.
now to drive the revenue for next year.
Yep. The whole thing is about driving the revenue. And I'll give you an example of a timeline. I have this a little further in the presentation here. So here I have 2024, and what we'd be looking at from smart schools is using about 75,000 of it, okay, of the remaining money. And this is on the expense side, okay. We would also then be looking to do those two projects Mr. Simons just mentioned and I was talking about, the wireless access point project, the UPS project. And we would end up spending about $272,000 in E-rate. And then the district, if we would do that, proposed upgrade to the local account to get it to $150K.
Just to reiterate, he's had a budget of $70,000
Yes.
for several years.
Yeah.
You would increase that budget
Yeah.
to $150,000.
I mean, that was appropriated in a time before the Chromebook program.
Yes.
Yeah. So that would drive about $186,000 in E-rate refund. Okay, it'd be 101 from the wireless access points. It'd be about 71, I believe, from the UPS project. And then we normally get, like I said, about 50,000 as a prorated share back from NERIC. So those three refunds would be where that 186 comes from. Okay. And then the number of units that we would be purchasing is a key point too. I'm saying we use that money to purchase 1,208, which is enough to do the high school. We have students who are taking high stakes tests, and we talked about that a little earlier. We need to make sure that we lower the chance that they're going to have some kind of technical malfunction during the test. The only way I know to do that is to buy the units and time their distribution before the test so that they have the best possible equipment that we can give them to give them the best possible chance to do well and have success.
Is there a way we can just buy extra equipment and set it up for them to come in that day and say, here's your Chromebook for that?
Yeah. And one of the things that I like about this plan, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Michelle, is that so all we really need to think about right now is this column, 2024. And what's built into this and what I like about this plan is we'll have a similar conversation and a similar adjustment to a plan in 2025, and 2026, and 2027. There are natural breaks built into the plan. We can modify it however we like. We don't necessarily have to do what, for all 4 years, what I've said, but it's how we would achieve the most of that E-rate money. But hey, times change, plans change. That's why we talk about them. So that's what would happen. You can see every year I'm purchasing, and it's based upon the numbers. I'm rolling them up each year. And I have like a detailed spreadsheet I don't want to bore you with, but I follow our enrollment and I'm rolling the figures up every year, and that's why you see this fluctuation in the number of units. Just so you know, that's based upon in 2024 a cost of about $340 for a Chromebook. In 2025 I upped it $20 and so on like that. Hopefully, they actually drop in price at some point, but I really don't have any way to know that. Okay, questions on this timeline? No? Okay. So strengths. This creates revenue. If you were to add up all 4 years, and we did exactly what I said, that would be $618,000 that we would add to our budget. That's revenue that we wouldn't have otherwise. Okay. This definitely would lower the impact of replacing the devices on the local taxpayer. If they had to shoulder that entire burden, it would be about $410,000 extra per year. It builds in flexibility year to year. It allows control over the availability of parts. That's something that I face. I faced it now in the 6 years we've been doing this several times. We'll buy a model, we'll invest in that model, HP, because we are an HP shop, they'll put out a new model, and all of a sudden the supply of parts dries up. And now I have Chromebooks that I can't find parts to replace, so I have to cannibalize from others. So this kind of eases that problem because it allows me to control that because I have more devices, right? Weaknesses. Until the plan is fully executed, we're going to be in a transitional period, and we must develop pools of spare parts until that period of time occurs. Opportunities. We get to maintain our network on a very high level. So we can not only expand it, but there are switches, firewalls, different network appliances that we use that they're going to become end of life in a few years, and we have to have a plan to support them too. That's what the E-rate money is for. Okay. And it enhances our communication systems and safety. One of the things that I will mention is that not only would the students and the staff have this better ability in the buildings to use their cell phone, but our first responders, in case of an emergency, would also benefit from that. So they would, I think back to March last year when we had an incident at the school. A lot of people were walking around trying to find cell phone signal. And so this is how I'm trying to address that. Right? And threats, keeping pace with the breakage rate. That's why I chose to replace at the high school every year, because they have a lower breakage rate than our middle school and our elementary. So why would I put a brand new device in a place where I have a higher breakage rate? I'd want the best with, trying to get the best bang for my buck, right? There's uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen to state aid year to year. We have no way to predict that. And that will affect our ability to make general fund expenditures. So we don't know if we'll be funded to the level that we are this year and next year. Can't say for sure. So that is definitely a threat to the success of the program. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a comment, Peter. I like the way you did this. I like the breakdown, projections, and plan. Strategic planning is necessary now, and the reliance on technology is only going to increase in education. So thank you. I think it's well put together.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Excellent, thank you. I can just say, as someone who does computerized testing at the higher level, make sure your network's ready for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I do feel
they completely freak out when their computer freezes.
Oh yeah. Marcin is over there because he's one of my network people. He's cringing because I'm going to say this, but I really am pretty confident that we're in good condition because we take those local district benchmarks every year, three times a year, and we're doing well with that. And that is hosted on the internet.
It might be more of a question for Roy. Sure. Do you think SATs are ever going to go virtual where you're not even in a school? A lot of the college ones are like that now, so.
I'm not sure. I feel as though there has to be a location right now. They're not even computer-based yet, so I could see something like that happening.
I mean, probably
down the
5,
road,
7
but
years, yeah.
Biggest problem we have there is remote proctoring because of trying to keep the integrity of the test. And I know we tried remote proctoring and we brought all the students back, and we have to have people there at this point.
Okay.
Very well articulated.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate the board's time and patience. We had a lot of information to share with you this evening. I think the rest of these items will kind of move through.
Do you want to talk about the calendar?
Yeah, real briefly, the school calendar has been approved by the calendar committee. It is very similar to the current year's. There are 5 snow days built in to the calendar. There is an observance of one of the Jewish holidays. The other one falls over a weekend, so it does not impact a school day. It is consistent with the contractual agreement regarding the number of days, work days for each of our employee groups and the number of state education department student attendance days. It has the number of parent conference days, superintendent's days, and professional development days that are consistent with what we did this year. So there really aren't any significant changes to it.
We don't need to vote on anything yet.
No, just an information item, and we'll ask you to adopt it at the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, on to regular business. Approval of programs for resident children with disabilities. Any questions or comments on it? Okay, a motion to approve? Joanne, Kathleen, in favor? Oh, myself, forgot. Okay. Is this one different? notice of public hearing?
Yes, let's have a brief discussion of this. Linda's going to pass out a handout. In the budget proposal, we talked about amending the use of the bus purchase reserve. This would satisfy the requirement for the public notice by amending it tonight. In order to meet the lead time that the newspaper requires to publish this, the public notice has to be approved tonight. So basically, there are 4 notices that have to go in the newspaper between now and the time the budget is voted on. The dollar amount for the budget is not required because we still haven't finalized that in the public notice, but based on advice of council, we're in a better position if we make the amendment tonight rather than change the public notice later on because it needs to get in the newspaper. So I'm going to ask Linda to just real briefly detail this. I spoke about going from 6 to 8 buses, but we want to go over the costs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simons. Real quickly, we talked about the 6 buses in the presentation, but typically our plan calls for replacing 8 buses every year. The original plan, going back to the original plan for 8 buses, we would plan to purchase 4 66-passenger buses, 2 wheelchair buses, and 2 30-passenger buses. That would be a cost not to exceed $965,386. So as Mr. Simon said earlier, our buses have an expected life of 10 to 14 years. If we buy 8 of the buses now, those would be some of the last buses to be traded in if the legislation for the electric buses holds, which means that by 2035, our entire fleet needs to be 0 emission. So these would be some of the last ones to be traded in. So just so that you know where our bus purchase reserve was, at the end of last year, June 30th, 22, we had about $1.2 million in the reserve. We purchased our buses this year. We purchased 8 buses for a total of $817,000. We will put the aid back into that reserve, $567,000. That's calculated at 69.5%. So estimating at the end of this year, we'll have about $1 million in the reserve. This is before any funding if the board would like to additionally fund the reserve as we typically do. So next year, these 8 buses would cost $965,000. We'd put the aid back in there of $670,000. And again, our ending balance would be about $728,000. That's before any funding from the board. So last year, we funded $500,000 in anticipation of getting ready for this electric bus initiative. And so, I'll be giving you a fund balance projection next month so we can start to take a look at, are we going to have money to fund the bus purchase reserve at the end of this year? So, there were two schools of thought there. One was purchase the 6 buses and keep money in the reserve for the future purchase of electric buses, or buy the buses now at the lower price. We use them for the next 10 to 12 years, and we get the aid, we have a lower price. And as you can see, the buses this year, for next year, are going to cost us $965,000. That's for 8 buses that this year cost us $817,000. So the price of a 66-passenger bus went from $120,000 last year to $147,000 for next year. So that continues to go up. So if the board would like to continue on our regular plan of purchasing 8 buses, as we talked about, 4 66-passenger, 2 wheelchair buses, 2 30-passenger buses, I have a revised resolution for you for the public notice hearing.
So what will have to happen is the board will have to make a motion to revise the resolution related to the notice of public hearing, page 3 of 5. has the proposition, which is proposition number 2, and it would change the dollar amount to the amount that is reflected on Linda's memo at $728,727. Is that correct?
No, the new amount, the revised amount is $965,386.
Okay. Yeah. And change the 4, add the additional 2 buses to the resolution.
And that is found on proposition number 2 on page 3.
So we have a revised copy of that, Linda?
Yes.
It's in.
Okay,
Yes.
very good.
So why the original ask is for 66 passenger and 2 wheelchair, but the 8, now we're adding the 30 passenger, is that?
Yeah, our
normally
original plan was for 8, but we said in light of the legislation where we're going to have to start purchasing electric buses, we said, well, could we hold on to a couple of buses, lower the cost of what we're spending, and save that money for future purchases? But the truth is, our plan calls for 8 purchases every year, and the price of the buses continue to go up. So we could get these buses now. These would last us for 10 to 12 years. This would bring us to 2035 when we actually need to be 100% zero emission.
There's a school fleet replacement schedule that we update every year, and it's on our website. It's one of our budget history documents. And so when Linda says we originally planned to be 8, the schedule that has been in place to replace vehicles generally would have replaced those 2 additional buses that we want to add now. And we just had some internal conversations within the last couple of days since the board agenda was published that we want to revert back to the original plan. But the agenda had already gone out, so this is required in order to revise the public notice to be consistent with what we had originally intended to do.
So our notice of public
I think my
hearing.
question was, like, you're adding, instead of adding another 66 passenger, you're not buying another 66, you're buying 2. Your decision is to buy 2 30 passenger. So I guess my question is, like, right, if these are the buses that are going to last us the longest through the whatever this change is having 2 30 passenger buses, how did you decide to buy 2 30 passenger rather than another 66
So we
passenger?
would be replacing 2 30 passengers. We would, if we go with this plan, we'll trade in 2 of the 30 passengers that we originally planned on trading in.
Those 2 30-passenger buses are currently utilized. They're also high mileage and they're old.
Right.
I don't know the years of them.
So you inventory, and these would be the next ones up for
Right,
replacement.
we're replacing existing ones that we would trade in. So that's the original request from the transportation department included those 2 30-passenger buses, which were also old and high mileage. We're just adding them back in.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Okay, so what do I do?
So Linda, help us out here with the dollar amount, okay? Make sure I get the dollar amount.
I think Mike would say the same thing. Just kidding.
That's okay. So what we're going to do is, first, we will have a vote to amend the notice of public hearing to include the purchase of 8 buses for the $965,000, and then we'll have a vote on the public hearing, the revised public hearing. So 2 votes.
So the first one is motion to.
Motion to revise.
To
the
revise
notice
it.
of public hearing.
Okay.
And I'll help you with that.
Thank you.
I'll
Second? Okay. All in favor? All right.
Thank you.
Approved.
For being flexible, we appreciate it.
And now the next one would be for the board to approve the revised notice of public hearing.
Okay. Motion? Kathleen, Joanne, all in favor? Okay. Next one is easier, I think. A motion to approve the honors physics for 23, fall of 23.
I'll help you with that as well.
Okay, John, Cheryl, all in favor?
Thank you.
Committee reports. Marissa's not here. Linda?
I have none at this time.
Okay, Roy, you're up.
I do have one. I'll be very, very short. The minutes are in the agenda. We did get some, typical program review updates from Mr. Jones regarding athletics. We had our two others, Ms. Shepherdson on CTE. We also endorsed the strengths and weaknesses of that for that program review. And then world languages, again, we endorsed the strengths and weaknesses for that program review. And just as a reminder, when those program reviews are complete, they will be coming to the board and presenting on their 5-year program reviews.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Stein?
No committee reports.
Okay. Next up is tabled motions. I don't think we have any, right? Old business, anybody? Okay, so now I'm moving along now. Consent agenda. We have A through I. Any questions on any of them or comments? Okay, can I have a motion? Joanne? Cheryl? All in favor? Okay. Next. No amendments, I don't think. New business. Okay. The very small public forum that we have. None. Board forum. Let's start with Cheryl this time. Okay. John. Good.
Just a reminder, Education Foundation Gala is next Friday night, March 31st. Tickets are still available from Stephanie. We will be inducting Eddie Kilgallen, musician currently out in Nashville, Chief Elaine Rudzinski, and we will be awarding a community award posthumously to Richard Schwartz.
Yes. That is it. I do think we're in need of an executive session.
Yes, and we may be coming out of executive session to vote on one item.
Okay. And do I vote to go on? Vote
Do a
to.
motion to go into executive session.
Okay, motion. John. Emily, all in favor?